Good afternoon. Thanks everyone for coming out. My name is Ronald Haley. I represent Mr. Raheem Howard. Before we get started, we would like to definitely offer our condolences to the family of Officer Toddy, who recently passed. Our hearts are with them. This is not anti-police in any way. We're very much pro-police. But what we aren't for is bad policing. And that's what we believe happened here. As the city knows, on August 7th, 2018, Raheem Howard was involved in a traffic stop with Officer Yusef Hamadeh. During the course of that traffic stop, Raheem Howard was threatened, shot at, and then later arrested. Arrested via a cover-up of Officer Hamadeh's actions. Raheem's life was put in danger when a citywide manhunt ensued for his capture. He was perp walked, reputation forever changed. And if not for a moment of guts, a moment of self-preservation, we may not be here today when Raheem captivated the city and later a nation with his words pleading for his innocence. And all of this is as a result of Officer Hamadeh lying to a judge in the 19th JDC and securing a warrant for his arrest for the charges of attempted first-degree murder and illegal use of a weapon. What we know afterwards was that Raheem Howard did not have a gun. Raheem Howard did not shoot at Officer Hamadeh. None of the physical evidence backed up any of his story. And neither did the eyewitnesses. Officer Hamadeh was later terminated. That termination is subject to an appeal at this point due to it being overturned via what we would call a tragedy of justice, that somehow throughout the internal investigation process that it was fumbled to the point that on a technicality he was able to get his job back. And now here we are with the lawsuit. We are charging that all parties named are responsible. We're alleging that this problem is bigger than just what happened to Raheem, that it stems from a cultural issue, in particular with the street crimes unit and the lack of discipline that happens whenever there is a case of excessive force or misconduct. I think that is evident through the process of Officer Hamadeh's employment hearing, that is in fact the case. That how do we say this? That any time that the community overall can see what happened, what it is, but somehow there was not probable cause to charge this officer with anything, backs up our claim that this problem is not just dealing with this particular case, but it is a problem dealing with the culture. With that said, I am going to open the floor to any questions and any statements my co-counsels are willing to make.
You talked a little bit about being disappointed in how that hearing was handled. Do you feel like that was intentional? Is that kind of what you're getting at with this lawsuit?
We don't know yet. if it's intentional. We hope through the discovery process and when we're able to issue subpoenas and folks would have to come in and testify um, under oath at a deposition, we could get to the bottom of it. But it definitely looks suspicious that a lie detector test was demanded upon Officer Hamadeh, but how that test was conducted would absolutely trigger off a problem within the police officer's Bill of Rights. It almost as if a poison pill was placed in the process to allow him to get his job back. And up to this point, we still do not know if an appeal has been lodged by the Baton Rouge Police Department. We were told that one was going to be filed, but at this point, we have not heard anything regarding that.
It's also worth noting that Officer Hamadeh's reinstatement was based on rights that you, me, anybody in this room as Louisiana citizens don't have. If I was brought in and someone gave me a lie detector test and I didn't have counsel, that lie detector, the case against me wouldn't be thrown out. The case against you wouldn't be thrown out. This was dismissed on a technicality that, despite the fact that Officer Hamadeh lied in such a fashion that Raheem Howard spent weeks in prison charged with attempted murder, based on the technicality that this Officer Hamadeh didn't have an attorney with him during the lie detector, a right that none of us have, the entirety of that case was dismissed and he was reinstated. That is injustice.
We hear so much about increasing the transparency and increasing the relationships between police officers and the public that they serve. Do you feel like a case like this kind of dismantles that work?
I don't want to say completely dismantles the work, but I definitely believe it causes a wedge to be put in between the trust between the police department and the community. Transparency isn't for the convenient, and it seems like we can have transparency when it's to the convenience of the police department, but when transparency is not to their convenience, we don't get it.
Also, the reaction of the Baton Rouge police to this lawsuit will be crucial to understanding how they value their relationship to the community. Officer Hamadeh's actions were unquestionably wrong. He lied to a judge in order to have Mr. Howard arrested. He lied that Mr. Howard shot a gun at him. The Baton Rouge police, they can work with this work with us on this lawsuit. They can work with us to find solutions. How they handle this will speak volumes about how they value their relationship with the community.
How do you think they could work with you on this?
We could, for example, one of the big issues in this case is both in the killing of Jordan Frazier and the shooting at Raheem Howard, Officer Hamadeh claims that his body cam and his dash cam videos weren't turned on. They can enforce stronger protocols. They can increase their training. They can increase discipline for officers when that happens. They can have more supervision in their office to prevent these things from happening again. If you look at count 3 of our complaint, we allege all the different ways that the city of Baton Rouge has failed to adequately discipline, train, monitor their officers, in particular in the street crimes unit. The city could offer to start doing this. At the time of the shooting at Mr. Howard, the city didn't even have a use of force policy in place.
Okay.
That was adequately trained on, and that certainly that Officer Hamadeh was familiar with.
You guys talk about the street crimes unit as a whole. Are there other incidents that you think play into this case as a collective unit of a group of the Baton Rouge Police Department that is unruly or not following protocol?
Do you want to?
Slide those from there. Well, typically what happens is those of us who practice criminal law all the time, the street crime unit has a very, very negative reputation within our community. It has been an anything goes posture that they've taken within the community. Such as this one, you have a situation where you have such heinous acts that take place, and then the process, I think co-counsel kind of alluded to, it's almost a, we'll clean it up after everything is done. That forsakes all transparency when it comes to what the different community leaders put out in our churches, in our neighborhoods when we do the marching. On one side of town, we have great marches going on saying, hey, we all want to work together, we want to come together, let's join arm in arm and be about transparency with the police department. On the other side of town, we have something like this occurring. It's totally conflicting, and it speaks to how sincere the East Baton Rouge Parish Police Department is. EBR Police Department is about their commitment to be transparent in a situation. Those of us who practice criminal law daily get a real sense of how this street crime unit really works in order to effectuate their jobs.
And going to the point of transparency, look how long, according to the internal report that's been, the part of the report that's been made public, look how long it took for any action to come about when Officer Hamadeh's cameras were down. Matter of fact, no action was taken. It was, I believe, one of the reports said approximately 3 weeks the camera had misfunctioned, and he just failed to go bring it in against a sergeant's superior officer's orders. That shows a lack of care for transparency. You are spitting in the face of transparency, because the point of having the cameras are so we do not have situations like this. The point of having transparency is that a group of lawyers sitting at a table advocating for a client's rights that has been absolutely trampled upon does not happen. But yet, here we are.
And indeed, in this case, it's particularly noteworthy. These cameras are supposed to show the community what happened. They're supposed to eliminate uncertainty. They're supposed to eliminate the he said, she said of these stories. Not only was Officer Hamadeh's camera not operational, but after Mr. Howard willingly turned himself into the police, a Baton Rouge police officer lied to Mr. Howard to try to get a false confession, saying the dash cam actually showed Mr. Howard with a gun, even though the dash cam, by their own admission, wasn't working, and Mr. Howard never had a gun. This is even worse than the dash cam not being on. The dash cam wasn't on to collect the actual truth. The Baton Rouge police then lied about it to try to coerce a confession of Mr. Howard, who is innocent of any crimes.
What do you all hope to get out of? I know you talked about changes within the Baton Rouge Police Department. What else are you hoping to see from this lawsuit? Is there what's the end goal?
One, justice for Raheem. You know, in this case, although we may have a cause and effect for the greater community, our obligation is to Mr. Howard, and we want to see him be made whole as much as that is possible given this ordeal. Subsequently, we hope that this does bring about widespread change. At the very least, a more transparent police department. At the very least, making sure that the cameras are functional and that there are appropriate policies in place when they are not. Again, I want to go back to it. Transparency and accountability are not for the convenient. And we hope that this brings about better policing. We hope that this brings about that the next time something happens like this, it is best that the truth comes out and everyone gets on the side of right, as opposed to quickly going to cover-up mode.
At this point, do you think there will be any criminal prosecution of former Officer Hamadeh?
I think it's difficult to say whether or not the district attorney's office is going to formally file any charges against Mr. Hamadeh. I think we should give deference to that office and allow them to do whatever investigation that they need to do, and hopefully they'll come back with a just decision in their decision-making process.
But I also think it's important to note that, you know, the district attorney's office, what they have at their disposal is what the police department brings to the table. And so what we're equally hopeful of is that the Baton Rouge Police Department brings forth any and all information, both to the benefit of Officer Hamadeh, but also to the benefit of Mr. Howard, and give a complete picture to the district attorney's office so they can make the decision. Let's not tilt the scales of justice by only giving credence to one side of this story.
Has the police department issued an apology to your client?
No.
You talked a little bit about your client earlier. You mentioned that he was no longer here in Baton Rouge. I guess could you elaborate a little bit more on how he's doing?
Yes. You know, it makes me smile whenever to think about how far this young man has come and the support that he's gathered nationwide. When we were able to help organize to get him to go to New York, he was able to make his own connections up there. And, you know, I'm pleased to say that Ms. Diaz with Rock Nation and the Sean Carter Foundation was instrumental in helping him relocate to Florida and get him employment, and hopefully get him the fresh start that he needs.
Did he want to leave Baton Rouge?
He did.
Why was that?
He felt he had a target on his back. He felt that his reputation was forever changed, that good or bad, he's known as that's the guy that was perp walked on TV that either was messed over by the police or that is trying to mess with the police. And he was in constant fear because of that.
Has he indicated whether or not he'd ever want to come back to live in Baton Rouge, or?
He has not. I mean, this is home. You know, he's a mama's boy. He loves his mother. His mother's still here. And so I believe Baton Rouge will always be home to him. But, you know, right now he hasn't given thought of when he would come back or if he would come back.
I know you can't speak on behalf of Raheem, but do you think that he can see a just police department in the future? Is that something that, I mean, does he want to see change here? Is that something that
Yeah, I could speak for him on that. He does want to see change. He hopes that this does not happen again. This should not have happened to begin with. Nowhere in this country should a situation like this happen where you are essentially assaulted and shot at by those who are to protect and serve you. And then afterwards it is made up to cover up their misdeeds. And then you arrested, having to hire a lawyer to come in to fight for your freedom. That is absolutely ridiculous that he's had to go through this. But he absolutely wants change. He does not want there to be another Raheem Howard situation.
You talked a little bit about, at the beginning, about how this is not anti-police, but you guys are against bad policing. Do you feel like having someone like this particular officer on the force endangers not just citizens, but those other men and women who serve?
We'll see.
Absolutely. What we want is a trustworthy, dependable, accountable police department. One, when charges are brought against somebody, we can have faith that they've been diligently investigated, that they've been truthfully looked into, that there's honesty surrounding all of it. That benefits everyone in the community. That benefits the police in building their trust with the community. It benefits the community in being able to trust the police to bring justice to horrible crimes that are committed. Every time there's an action like Officer Hamadeh's, it creates roadblocks, it creates barriers, and this is why I say this lawsuit can serve as a pivotal point for the Baton Rouge Police Department to accept responsibility, to acknowledge its shortcomings, and rebuild its relationships with the community so we can have a police department that we all believe in, that we all trust, that is more effective in every way.
And I think on that same note, it's important to say, I think we all know good police officers. I think we would be remiss to not acknowledge the fact that some of those same police officers are our friends, are our family members here in East Baton Rouge Parish. And so we know that everyone is not bad. It's unfortunate that the sounds of the bad police outweigh those of the good. And so we have to, like counsel said, we have to use this as some sort of a springboard to create that sort of relationship where transparency not only is necessary but is demanded, and so that we can have a fair and equitable relationship with the police department.
The only other thing I wanted, if you, one of you could pinpoint, you know, when you look at this case, and you brought it to federal court, what are the constitutional violations that you think have happened against Mr. Howard in this case specifically?
So the federal constitutional violations are laid out in counts 1 through 3 in the complaint. Count 1 deals with particularly Officer Hamadeh, how he violated Mr. Howard's constitutional rights under the 4th and 14th Amendment against malicious prosecution, against false arrest, against excessive use of force, and against fabrication of evidence. Obviously, the Due Process Clause protects all of us as citizens from police fabricating evidence of crimes. We've additionally alleged that in their supervisory capacity, Chief Paul and the city of Baton Rouge have abrogated their constitutional responsibilities under the 4th and 14th Amendment by failing to supervise their employees, by failing to train properly their employees, by failing to take appropriate disciplinary actions when one of the employees violates someone's constitutional rights. And this has enabled a culture in the Baton Rouge Police Department, in particular with the street crimes unit, where people like Mr. Howard's rights are violated and there are not consequences, adequate consequences for the officers that do.
Which one of you guys will be lead counsel on this suit?
It's a collective army. We all have very important parts to it. We're all very capable trial attorneys, and so to say one person necessarily is going to be lead versus the next. We have a great working relationship how we divide those duties up.
I'm good.
Thank you guys so much.